SULKNATIONtv. In this episode, I'm going to be discussing high mileage cars and what you should look for if you're going to buy one. Now, as always in my videos, this is my opinion. It will be the three things that I think are most important when looking to buy a high mileage car. But before we go there, what we need to do is discuss what high mileage is. Now, talking to my dad and people of that generation, the generation before me, I'm 37, so 60-year-olds, let's say that makes it easier. They will tell me, and tell you probably, or tell yourself if you're one of those people, that 10,000 miles a year signifies average mileage. So on a 15-year-old car, expect as an average 150,000 miles, which makes sense. It's good to go off. When I take my two cars as an example, my R53 Mini Cooper S, which is on 108,000 miles, and my Volkswagen Golf, which is a 2013 plate, that's on 145,000 miles. On paper, you look at that and go, wow, that's high mileage for a car that's 7 and a bit years old. Whereas the Mini, well, that's less than average mileage. That's not close to being 150,000 miles. So, oh, that must be good. But no, let me stop you there. If we say that anything high mileage is 100,000 miles or more, then it kind of gives us a little bit more leeway to sort of discuss it. So I've driven some BMW 3 Series and 5 Series that have all been high mileage. And, you know, let's say they're all around sort of 2007 to 2009 models. And some of them, 100%, 185,000 miles, doesn't look like they've done 185,000 miles. They are driving perfectly, the interior is perfect, the exterior is perfect, under the bonnet seems perfect. Whereas I've driven another car around the same sort of time, another Beamer, another 3 or 5 Series that was on, say, 150,000 miles, but it looked like it had been driven 400,000 miles and dead bodies had been found in the car when it was abandoned. That is an issue. And that is the minefield of high mileage cars. You can get big mileage, but an excellent car, or you could get less than average mileage, but a destroyed car. And that's why these three areas that I'm going to discuss now are what I think people should look for when discussing or looking to purchase a high mileage car. So, number one, service history. Now, I don't think a part service history is the end of the world, but at the same time, it's going to affect the price. Of course it is. Because a part service history, it can be, I've lost 6 years of the services of a 20-year-old car, but I've got the last 14 years worth of information. Okay, that's pretty extensive service history. That's fine. That's something where you kind of go, oh, okay. Even if it was the last 10 years, you're like, right, you've lost the first 10 years, but I've got the last 10 years and I can see that history. I can see how the car has been serviced at the right amount of mileage. It's been serviced well. It's had the right inspection services done. You know, if it's just an oil change or if it's a big service, it's had them done. I can read through timing belt or timing chain, or, you know, you can look through and you can see it's been done in that time period. Then that's quite a good part service history. That's what I'd call a part service history. Whereas some people say a part service history is anything where you've got some service history for the car, which is crap. That's not right. That can't be right. Because you could have a guy that's owned a car for 3 years and has got 3 years worth of service history from him owning it, but no history before that. To me, that isn't a part service history. That's not service history. That's just what that owner's done. Maintenance is, with all cars, hugely important. And being able to see the record of maintenance, that's where you're going to add value. I would buy a 200,000 mile car if it had full service history. Of course I would. I would definitely buy one. Would I buy a 200,000 mile car if it had no service history? No. Would I buy a 200,000 mile car if it had part service history? Well, what, the part service history I was discussing, like 10 years worth of service history in the most, you know, as in the 10 years most recent service history, then yeah, probably. Also, what I would look for in a service book are stamps from dealers and specialists. Now, all right, if you've got a run-of-the-mill, don't really care about sort of car, like a Vauxhall Astra or something, it doesn't matter where it gets serviced, really. But if you've got something that you know it demands to be serviced correctly, like a Mini Cooper S R53, because of how temperamental they are, or like generally German cars. My Golf gets serviced by a specialist Volkswagen garage because it's a Volkswagen. And it's not because other mechanics aren't good enough. It's because these people work on these cars day in, day out. Paddock Motors, who I take, and I have taken the Minis that I've owned in the past, just to Paddock Motors because they're a BMW Mini specialist. I'm going to take it there over anywhere else because they specialise in that car. Does it mean that as a general mechanic, they're better than other people? Not necessarily, but does it mean that they know what they're looking for in the car that I own? Yes. I'm definitely not saying don't get it serviced by another garage that you trust. Of course, get it serviced. As long as it's serviced, that's the most important thing. But for me, I want my cars, when I own them, to be serviced by specialists. And if I'm looking at a car, I want to at least see some of the service history showing that it's had people that know those cars working on them. This also brings up the issue of driveway mechanics, which I've got a lot of time for. I've done a lot of stuff on my Mini myself. I've done a few things on the Golf myself. But when it comes to servicing, I think if you're somebody that really loves your car and you know exactly how to service it, that's great. Yes, you can't stamp the book officially, but you are servicing it. You really are. What you need to do, though, because it's not worth anything if it's not stamped in the book. If it's not on paper, it doesn't exist. And you can be the most trustworthy person in the world. But if you've done all of the services in your ownership of a car yourself, keep the receipts. Keep the receipts of the things that you've bought for that service, like filters, like oil, like spark plugs. Keep those receipts to prove and use as a record that you've done the servicing. Because you look at it and go, right, okay, well, I serviced it in July 2018. Right, cool, okay. Did you have any receipts to prove that you serviced it in July 2018? No. Well, realistically, I'm not really going to take your word for it when I'm buying a car from you. I want to see some evidence. And that's not being horrible, that's being sensible. And if people have kept their receipts, if people that have done the services themselves have kept receipts, then you've got that as history. You've got that as confirmation. Well, yeah, I can see that this year and the year before, I can see receipts for the items, the perishables, the things that are getting replaced in a service. So that counts. It might not be in the book, but it does count. So that's a good thing to look for. Don't go for a car that doesn't have any of those things. The second thing is MOT history. Now, this is one of my favourite things to check. Whenever I'm looking for cars, and even if I'm not looking for a car, I'm looking for a car, I go on the MOT checker on the government website. Oh, the government. And I look at the history of a car. And it makes me laugh because I do it a lot of the time just to prove what's been written in the spiel of a car being sold. Just to prove it wrong. Because more often than not, you're going to get somebody going, car's been well cared for. It's done really well. I've got full service history, blah, blah, blah. Oh, the car's wanted for nothing. When somebody says it's wanted for nothing, I always think there's a little bit of bullshit in there. I have to say, I do. Because you then go on an MOT checker and go, right, okay, so you've said that you own this in your advert. I've owned this for the last 5 years, or the previous owners owned it for the last 8 years. There's only been 2 owners, and the last owners owned it for 13 years. You look through the MOT history and you're like, well, it's wanted for quite a few things, to be honest, because it's failed quite a few times. And some of the things that are advisories or repair and monitor if necessary, things that are labelled under those keep cropping up, which means that the car, well, it has wanted, hasn't it? Because you haven't provided. But when you're seeing regular things about suspension cropping up or brake lines, or one of my favourites, which is cars failing on tyres, that isn't an owner that really knows what they're doing. That's not an owner that loves and appreciates their car. If they're allowing their car to fail the MOT because their tyres are bald. Nah. That's not good. And I mean, it is a fun game to play, MOT check. I've been looking, I won't tell you the car, but I've been looking at a specific type of car recently that I love. And I really want to get one. And I saw one that was, I'd say, overpriced on 195,000 miles. And it was priced at 3.5 grand. And I was like, okay. And so in the spiel from the seller, it's saying about bodywork's perfect, doesn't look like it's driven or been run for that amount of miles. And then you're looking at the pictures and you're spotting like sort of little bubbles of rust around like the lock on the boot, or a little tiny bit of, a little bubble of rust on one of the wheel arches. That's not mentioned. And you're like, right, okay, well, if they're not mentioning that and I can see it and they're saying the bodywork is perfect and I'm seeing bubbled rust, you go, right, okay, let's MOT check it. MOT check it. All right, okay, so maybe some of the owners have given a toss about the car, but some of them definitely haven't. So is that a £3.5 grand car with that mileage? No, it isn't. It's got full service history. Great, tick 1. MOT check? Nah, man, that's not been looked after properly. Also, it's got bubbly rust that the seller isn't telling me about. That isn't good. So, MOT check is definitely important. Service history, most important. MOT check, second on that list, because they're the things that you can do before looking at the car. And I always think it's slightly odd when people obscure their number plates on car ads, because it stops you from checking the MOT check. So you've got to go with what's been written about the car, and then what you see if you spend time and money getting to where that car is advertised. I'm not going to go and see a car that I don't know the MOT history of and travel and fund my travelling to go and get it. So don't obscure your number plate, because that's just, it's odd. It's odd, because if you're selling it, you want to make it as visible as possible, unless you don't want to make it visible. You don't want the buyer to see why, realistically, you're asking for £1 grand more than it's really worth. Now, third and finally, exterior interior tells you a lot about the car. It really does. It tells you everything that you needed to have filled in from the MOT history and the service history, because you can see with your own eyes whether that car has definitely been looked after or whether it hasn't. You can check. You can visually check. I mean, if you're looking at a car that's a distance away, then ask for videos of the exterior. Ask for videos around the wheel arches where there's common areas of rust. Jacking points, common areas of rust. If it's got a sunroof, can you ask the person selling it to take pictures around the sunroof, because you'll be able to see if there's any damp getting in. Well, you might be able to see, let's say. If you're in a situation where you can actually physically check the car yourself, then yeah, check those areas. Check wheel arches, check jacking points, check under the bonnet, check around the door sort of frames, not the frames, the door jambs, the wells. You know, when you open the door, the bit the door comes out of, you know what I mean? Yeah, like this bit here, those areas. Check all of those things for rust. Check all of those things for wear and tear, because sometimes they're hidden. Like, you can look at a car and go, that interior is absolutely perfect, and then you're like, right, okay, the interior is perfect, but the exterior leaves a lot to be desired. So somebody's had it valeted really well inside, but can't cover up the actual issues that the exterior of the car has. So double check everything. Seeing a car with a pristine exterior, pristine interior, that's a big tick straight away, because you can see somebody's taken the time and effort to keep it looking great. If then it's backed up by service and MOT histories, excellent, you're on for a winner. And yeah, all right, I might not have gone into that much detail with the exterior interior, but then that's because that's, that you judge that yourself with your own eyes. So you're looking and doing it yourself anyway. Whereas MOT history, service history, very important to check out on a car. It's obvious, and I know it's obvious, but I thought I'd still do a video because I am looking myself at some high mileage bargains. And I thought, service history, what do I look for in a service history? And MOT check history, what am I looking for in that? Maybe you guys want to know. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I really do. And until the next time, I've been me, you've been you, and well done for that. And also